Before I start, I need to ask a couple of questions because most of my work is around the leadership space, and 9 times out of 10, we make a hell of a lot of assumptions before we do that. So before we get into the whole AI interface and such, 9 times out of 10, can I kind of, whilst this is playing hide and seek, can I just have a raise of hands and let's kind of make this interactive and see where I can take you with this journey. Number one, how many of you think that people want to be trained in the first place? Okay, a few didn't put their hand up. How many think that people are perfectly fine where they are, don't want to get promoted, don't want to augment themselves, and as long as you pay them relatively high salaries, they are perfectly fine? How many of you think that 9 times out of 10, if you actually pay them higher, they actually might not want to get promoted in the first place? So for example, if you pay a senior manager's salary for a young executive who's just starting out, they don't want to even get promoted. Let's see. Pay them enough and promotions don't really matter. How many? Okay. Now I'm flipping this. How many of you actually think that the vast majority of people who turn up for an employment purpose actually stays inside the organization because of a good culture and because of good bosses and because of a good culture? The vast majority of you. Assumptions, right? Have you ever validated these assumptions? Fantastic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But 9 times out of 10, you'll probably agree that most of these are just assumptions. We are assuming people want to be trained. And I tried this little hypothesis before we go into the workplace environment. Let me talk about home for a moment. Once again, just a show of hands so that I know the demographics I'm working with. How many are married with kids? Vast majority. Great, so you'll relate to this. If you have 2 kids or more, I come from a rather large family. My father was from a very industrious, illustrious family who had 12 in the family. So you can understand how illustrious and industrious my grandfather was. 12 in the family, 4 boys, 8 girls, and each of them decided to have at least 4 children, and I ended up with 48 cousins, of which I am the youngest, and the one that came after me was actually a mistake. The reason why I call it a mistake was the fact that he is my eldest uncle's youngest son, who happens to be 10 years junior to me. You work the sum. And my eldest uncle is 10 years senior to my father. If that doesn't make that a mistake, well, nothing will. But the point I want to make is, given that I had such a large number of family members to kind of do this thing with, I actually went and asked every single one of my cousins, when they had children of their own, how many of them actually wanted each of their children to be better than them. And the vast majority of parents would actually say, that is our life's ambition. We want our children to be better than them. Now, when we make that statement, we make 2 assumptions. One is that they're at least as intelligent as you. Might not be the case, with all due respect. The second is that they're willing to put in the time and the commitment that you put in order for them to be better than what you are. Because it ain't going to just come simply because they happen to be your children. Even if you were stupendously excellent at what you do, it doesn't get passed down the genes. Experience doesn't work that way. So, thank you for the opportunity, and I sincerely hope I will be able to kind of give you a synopsis of this. Because to me, before you move into this whole AI space, I think it's fundamentally important to look at basics first. And I think that's where we make most of our mistakes. Because especially in the learning space, you move into this whole set of core questions and core assumptions we make. A couple of core questions because of time. Number one, what is talent to begin with? How would you say this is the person who actually is the next CEO of the organization? Here are the group of people who are ready and able and willing to take on senior management levels. And here is the group of people that we wouldn't even invest time and energy in because they're just not worth it. Now, most people have a really tough time with the third question. The first 2 easy. You turn around and say, they show the right behavior, they show the right performance, they're fantastic, here we go, good stuff. What about the last group? Because they are there. But most of us actually have a huge problem in telling somebody, you're not going to cut it. You're not good enough. This takes me back to me playing basketball. Growing up, my life's ambition was to play basketball at NBA. You take a look at me and you understand why I can't, right? I'm not biologically made to play basketball. Elephants and I both can't jump. So doesn't bode well for someone who has aspirations to play at NBA level. But I didn't want to give up because I was spewed this garbage to say, try again. You will succeed. Never give up. So I tried and I tried and I tried again, but I was still no good. Was I getting better than what I was? Absolutely. Was I good enough to play at the NBA level? Sadly not. And this was so gut-wrenchingly difficult for my coaches to sit and observe that one of them actually turned up and said, Vidusha, I'm really sorry to break this to you. You're never going to be that good. And he broke me. At 15 years old, I was gutted because my life's ambition was lost. And I told him, I'll show you. Because I've read about Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan was just coming into the scene, and I told myself, you know what, if they can do it, so can I. So I went for practices twice as much. Don't hold your breath, this story does not have a happy ending. I'm here, aren't I? And you have not seen me on the billboards for Nike. So, long story short, I practiced really hard, I got really good at it. But in one of those crucial moments, I think my coach wanted to show to me what he meant by me being not good enough. And at the quarterfinals of the All-Ireland Championship, I was given an opportunity to play. 5 minutes in, the lead that we had got was almost diminished and we were losing the match because of me. I substituted myself out. Went home, cried all day, and that was the end of my basketball career before it even began. Now, the point I want to make is, I am glad my coach did that to me. That was part of his job. And later on, I did do certain other things like chess and debating and public speaking and things like that, which I excelled in because I had a natural gift for it. No gift for basketball. So sometimes what you would like to do and what you're good at doing don't match. Where are you capturing both? In your reviews. What you're good at, everyone knows. What you're not good at, nobody wants to tell you. And I think that's fundamentally wrong. The next one, why develop them in the first place? Do they want to be developed? Now, nobody asks the question, how much of time are you willing to commit and how much of effort are you willing to put to upgrade yourself? For example, if this event was not funded by the organization, would you pay for it and come? How many people would actually spend money on their own development? Forget money, because money is tight for all of us. Time. Would you rather watch Netflix or just scroll through YouTube or watch something useful? If you can't do that much for yourself, why would an organization spend money, time, and energy to invest in you? Now, once again, nobody asks this question. I'll give you a quick example of this. Once we ran a program for some of our key clients, and we had a very simple test. We gave them 100 pages of learning, simple stuff. 10 pages per topic, 10 topics, 10 videos per topic, 100 videos. And we gave them 2 months to turn around and say, read this, watch the videos. Don't do anything else. It's not big stuff, it's just very small stuff. And we gave them 100 questions at the end of it and said, if you are going to come into the program, you need to get at least 65%. Otherwise, it means that you haven't even bothered to read it. Now, why do that? Because we want people to commit to their own development before they actually turn up at a program. Versus simply being told, you know what, come for it anyway. Now, no amount of AI will ever be able to assess that unless you have the data with you. How would you know that data? Put them to the test. What is the best way to find out somebody who really wants to get things done? One simple test. Do this. My job is to give you practical examples of all of this. What's the one best way to test anyone, including your children? If they really want to do something, here's the litmus test. What is the one thing you can do with employees? Very simple. Give them a task, don't give them a budget. Those who really want to do it will do it. Children who want to play basketball, people who want to play sports will do it without shoes. They don't wait for their parents to give them shoes. They do it anyway. They will go and do absolutely anything that is required to get the job done because that's the passion that they do it with. Where is that at work? Third assumption is developing them means sending them for programs. Sessions like this, training programs which they come to us for. But not really. You really do need a bigger plan than that. Sending somebody for a training program and expecting them to come up as a leader at the end of it just doesn't work. Can you teach Excel that way? Yes. Can you teach skills that way? No. You can't learn swimming by watching a video on YouTube about swimming. What makes you think that leadership can be taught that way? So the real test in learning is in application. Where does that happen? At the actual workplace. Not in a hypothetical case study where you give recommendations. Recommendations are done best over a drink. Because then everyone is a expert in everything. We can give, MBAs are full of this, right? We give recommendations after recommendations. Try doing one of them at work. That's when the real problem happens. If you really think that you're really good at something, try convincing your mom not to ask you whether you have eaten. Especially if you're from our part of the world. My mother calls me up today. I'm 49 years old. I have a 22-year-old daughter. First question, early in the morning, have you eaten? I'm like, Ma, can you give up on that already? Now, I can't convince my mother not to ask that question that she asked me for 49 years. And you expect me to change people's mindsets. Good luck to you. The final part is about, is development enough? Because you do all of this and they come out on the other side. We have fantastic programs that actually groom people to the next tier and then they're taken by somebody else. What's the point? So the assumption is that if you train people, if you groom people, if you give them all the money and the success that there is, they will stay with you. Maybe not. Because as we mature in age and as we go through life, our priorities change. So maybe what people are interested in is not so much getting double the salary, but spending more time at home. None of these assumptions are actually validated by data because we assume we know. So my first call to action is when you go back to work, ask these 4 questions, get some data around it, and then see what it throws out. Because if those fundamental assumptions are wrong, whatever you're designing in your development spaces is going to be wrong as well. Now, having said that, what have we learned over the years? Well, just 4 things in the interest of time. First of all, any form of development starts with you actually saying, I want to improve. How do we do that? I'll give you 2 simple examples. One organization does this. Sometimes we sign NDAs, and I might be very careful because I'm getting recorded in what I say. So I won't name organizations, but if you need to know, I'll be around. Do come and speak to me. I can give certain things out in private forums rather than in public forums. But one organization did a fantastically innovative thing in this. How do you know that people want to be trained? You know what? They turned around and said, look, very simple. For the first 2 years, if you're serious about your development, whatever increments that you're getting gets funded towards your development. And whatever that increment is, we double that and put that towards your development fund. I thought that was pretty spunky, don't you? You're not getting an increment, you're getting a 15% or 20% increment, but we are holding that as the organization. We are putting twice the amount of money that you're putting in towards your own development, and we're going to send you to the best places ever. But you need to make a sacrifice too. You're not going to have your own increment. Is that okay? What do you think the success rate of that was? And how many people do you think actually raised their hand and said, yes, that's fine? A shocking 5%. Another 30% turned around and said, well, 50% of our advance. We'll let it go, but 50% increment, give it to me. You know, I have children to feed. I have other things to do. I do need to buy a car. So 50%. So that makes a total of 35%. What happened to the 65 others? 65% turned around and flatly said no. Fantastic, don't you think? Now, is this fair? Maybe not. But that shows a commitment that you would make. Another simple example, right? Another organization did another crazy thing. And they turned around and said, you know what? If you want us to invest in you, not a problem at all. But once you come back, you need to make sure that whoever that you two people that you have identified as your successors, you're going to train them. And we are going to do the test not for you, but for the juniors. If they fail, you don't get your next increment, you don't get your next bonus, and you do not get promoted. Because your job is to train just two people. That's it. Whatever you have learned, go and train them. You know the pass rate of that? Roughly about 35% did a fantastic job, roughly another 35% did an okay job, roughly about 35% never bothered to teach anybody else. Now you know. Next one. Any form of development initiative needs to be multi-pronged. Programs alone doesn't work. Coaching matters. Mentoring matters. And sometimes just giving people a space to do something matters. Take some random junior level person, give them an initiative and see what happens. Most of us are far too scared for that to happen. Most of us don't even let our children come alone by bus home, and we expect them to grow up to being able to be individuals who are able to take life by the horns and run with it. It's tough. Leadership isn't being made in comfortable surroundings. Leadership is done in the worst of spaces. In fact, if everything is good, you don't need leadership in the first place. So, the final one is, so you do need to kind of have a multi-pronged attack on this. And you also need to ensure that there is a fast track for people, the minority of people who truly commit to their own development. They need to have a fast track. They can't go through the normal career progression plan. They won't wait. And they're the people who generally get headhunted. And you know what, when the best people leave, who gets left behind? Not the loyal ones, but the incapable ones. Don't ever mistake the two. So, in the interest of time, what does a space of training and development look like? Take a look at least 3 years. Don't look at an annual training plan. Look at least 3 years. I recommend a 5-year rolling plan. In the first year, get a group of people that you think is roughly okay. Policies, procedures, and training programs and all the rest of it needs to be part of this. In the second year, percolate that group, right? And make sure that you find out the real stars. And in the third year is when you really start investing in them. Until then, you're figuring it out. Otherwise, your investment is a lost cause. Returns on investment only happens if you invest in the right things. Just because you make investments doesn't mean it yields results. Finally, I just want to give you 3 examples. Give me 2 minutes additional, yeah? 3 examples from Sri Lanka. Invert the pyramid is where the game is. See, we have come far too far in our journeys to allow traditional type of hierarchical leadership to function. It's archaic, it takes too long, and people can't wait for instructions. They need to be able to take things and run. How do they do that? Well, Dankotua Porcelain was a loss-making organization for nearly 30 years, a public listed company that almost always had a negative result. 5 years earlier, they turned this business around and ensured that they had the best year in history just after COVID for an organization that had 90% of their business getting sales from locally, from Sri Lanka. Right? Only 10% of it was international. How did they do it? Very simple. They did a radical new thing. They broke the entire management team and the executives in Sri Lanka underneath the assistant managers. They broke this entire team into 6 different groups, right? And they turned around and told those groups they were cross-hierarchical, cross-functional, okay? So you can have a junior level executive and a senior level manager inside the same group, inside the same team. 6 teams were told you have 2 months to run the business, which means running the P&L. The entire traditional hierarchy was taken out. They were given the mandate to run it, and you know what? For 3 years in a row, they bettered performance financially. They are probably one of the most runaway successes in the country. Stock market prices have nearly tripled, quadrupled over that period of time. So much so that if you actually had that stock, you would have been a millionaire by now, right, over a 3-year period. GTN is an IT company, completely different. Dankotua is manufacturing, hardcore manufacturing. But GTN is a newbie, right? They make software for the Saudi Stock Exchange, so you can understand what precision should be like. Now, what do? Do you know that they don't have a job description? They don't have a KPI, they don't have a performance appraisal. They have none of the traditional archetypes that HR would recommend. What do? They bring their engineers, no titles, no designations, they just bring them into a room and turn around and put the project and turn around and say, who wants this? And someone volunteers. And then he or she is given the charge to say, you know what, you choose your team. And the team members are told, you can decide whether you want to be part of it or not. Now, here's the wonderful part. Just because you want them in your team, doesn't mean they'll come. You know why? Because if you've not been the kind of person who is actually worthy of being led, you wouldn't come into that team. And naturally, people segregate themselves. Now, these are fantastic case studies for you to understand that the data that you seek for AI needs to be tempered with a certain amount of maturity and actual results on the ground. And when you design programs around these things, well, business results actually happen. So, thank you very much. All the very best. If you have anything else, I'll be around for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Quick question, going back to the organization you were talking about, where they said either you take the increment or you put it back. It sounded to me like when we were growing up, mummy achhi hai ki papa achhe hai, right? So, yes. I mean, I don't think that's a good criteria, or a reasonable, I won't say good, a reasonable criteria to identify the people who really want to learn. You know, imagine a 24-year, 25-year-old child getting into a business or getting into a job and sacrificing 50,000, 60,000 ki salary, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So do you have anything to say on that?
No, absolutely. Thank you for raising it. And I actually raised the same thing with the management team when I found out they were doing it. Because this was part of my research, right? I mean, I do a ton of research about mad practices inside organizations because I find them interesting. And what they turned around and said, look, I agree with you. It is unfair, right? And they turned around and told me something profound which stuck with me. He turned around and said, leadership is about a lot of love and unreasonable requests. And the love, justifies the unreasonable request. So kindness, they turned around and said, is a question mark of when. Do you want to be kind now, or do you want to be kind 5 years later? What you're sacrificing now, 9 times out of 10 in your own development bears fruit only 5 years later. You might not see it that way, but it will happen. And part of our job is to make sure that people understand that. Now, that's a bitter pill for me to swallow. I swear, if I was working in the organization, I wouldn't take it myself because I have better things to do with my money. Having said that, there is a shred of truth in it because your development, if you are willing to put that first, at least 50% of it, then I think you're demonstrating that you really do want to grow. And that is the first test. Now, what you don't realize is they have a system of actually paying that back later, right? But they don't know that when they sign in for it. They think it's forfeited. So 2 years later, 3 years later, if they have met the objectives of the learning outcomes that they have done, they actually get paid back, whatever that they have lost. So they do justify it, but nobody knows this because if you know it, then people won't act, then everybody will sign up, yeah, because you know you'll get paid. So thank you.